On this episode of Property Journal, I'm talking with Mike Greene. Mike is an investor, mentor, property investor, author, podcast host, and successful businessman, having bought, built, and sold an international consulting business for an 8-figure exit. He featured on Channel 4 TV program Secret Millionaire, Season 9, Episode 6. Mike started out in retail and was the youngest chairman and longest serving board member for the ACS, the Association of Convenience Stores, representing over 33,500 small retail stores in the UK. It's clear that having achieved success personally, Mike has a real desire to give back and share his wealth of experience. Mike is the author of Failure Breeds Success and the podcast Success is a System. Mike is a strategic board advisor and business growth mentor, retained as a board coach and mentor by over 40 UK businesses. I'm very much looking forward to talking with Mike. Mike, welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
So tell me, who is Mike Greene?
Well, it's a question that we all asked ourselves a lot of the time, actually. And I was thinking about it just the other day because somebody who I was speaking to was attacking private education. And, you know, I went to this school that was called a demonised depository for social waste. And my girls went to this amazing school called Oundle, which was a fee-paying school. And I realised that 20 years ago, I'd have been saying, yeah, bloody private schools, all these things. So when you say, who is Mike Greene, I think I'm someone who now lives in an environment that would have been my prejudice when I was growing up. And I can now look back and see the benefits of both. And so I am an entrepreneur, if you wanted a label, but really I'm somebody who, there's a saying that the more I learn, the more I know that I know nothing. Yeah. And so I'm a guy on a voyage of discovery, trying to improve myself in many ways, trying to help other people along that journey, and trying to have some fun along the way.
That's awesome. A big part of what you do is actually helping people, mentoring people, as well as philanthropic work.
Yeah.
Where did that come from? Was that part of sort of your upbringing that's led into the success you've had and want to give back, or where does it come from?
Yeah, I mean, I went to this terrible school, but the teachers there, what I realised is if you wanted to learn, they wanted to teach you. But so many kids at that school didn't want to learn, and so they were kind of just forgotten or left by the wayside. And then I went into I tried banking. I hated it, but I got a lot of friends who were in banking. It's obviously their thing. But I went into retail, and along that journey, I learned lots of things. But I got into behavioural profiling because I wanted to understand the psychology of shopping, why people choose which products they do, and what can make them buy more. And I realised that you could change people's behaviour. And that started to get me into this kind of interest and passion in behaviour and behavioural profiling, to the extent that if I can understand people, I can connect with them differently. And then I used to help a builder, and I mentor a lot of trades now as well as other businesses. But I realised that in the trade sector, there's a massive amount. I mean, like, I'm guessing, but 70% that are ADD, ADHD, dyslexic, dyspraxic. And I thought, my God, why is one sector so full of people that are on this spectrum? But what I realised is it's because they didn't do well at school. And it wasn't that they weren't able to learn, because they then went on and got an apprenticeship. They got a qualification as an electrical engineer, a gas engineer, a bricklayer, or whatever it was. So they were definitely teachable. And so along that way, I realised that if I could connect with the way they learn and teach them something, I could take them to a better place. I'd done it with myself. You know, I used to say to my kids, I will do today what others will not, so I can live tomorrow like others cannot. But I knew I needed to change my pack. I needed to move away from the limiting beliefs I had. So doing it for myself made me realise if I can do it to me from where I came from, I can kind of help anybody. And because I, you know, have lived in poverty, you know, when we first became homeless, we lived in a hospice for a little while, then a caravan, then a council house and stuff. And then I live a life today that I could have only dreamed of, that I can help other people that are at that level get to there. But I need to learn to be able to connect with them at a level where they would be open to learning and to learn their learning style.
Yeah, there's so much there. Just listening to you, I'm a dad, 12 and 13-year-old daughters. Yeah. And just, you know, how you could argue broken the education system is right now. And with the social media, with AI, it's almost exposing potentially an archaic system that was for employees People that learn, if you're not interested, there's no kind of safety net to catch those people. And then the ADHD and all the things that people can suffer from a concentration point of view. Very driven, motivated people. Probably both of us, that was one of our big synergies. Case in point, struggled at school. What can be done at that stage from a learning point of view in schools? More about kind of inspiring people.
Well, I did a piece a week or two when GCSEs were coming out and A levels, and they were talking about we need to let more people from underprivileged backgrounds get into university. And the problem with that was it was penalising people who had, not through their choice, their parents had sent them to a good school and they'd worked really hard. And trust me, it's like military when you're in some of these schools. You're working like 16-hour days, 5 or 6 days a week. So they often do better just because of the amount that they do. And to then say you can't go to Cambridge or Oxford or Russell Group because we've got a quota and we've got to put these people in is wrong. What we need to do is get in at the 4 and 5 year old stage. And I was once a school governor at a primary school, and it amazed me. We would get letters in saying, can you tell them they have to go to bed at 7 o'clock because they won't listen to us? And the biggest issue with the first entry at reception was they couldn't eat with a knife and fork and they couldn't wipe their bum. And you think, Christ, these kids are 4, but they've only had finger food, and they're so dependent. And so to me, at that point, we need to get to a point where we're starting to hold parents accountable, where we're understanding really early on what style of learning of these kids got, and we start to throw extra time and money and focus on the kind of 4 till 10, because the old saying, show me a boy of 7, I'll show you a man. I mean, obviously it's not male, but it does encompass the fact that behaviorally your profile is in place by the time you're 7. It changes with a bit of emotional intelligence and it changes with life-changing stuff, but otherwise it doesn't. You are there. So trying to do stuff after the age of 7 is already, in many ways, too late.
But nothing's being done up until that age that I'm aware of.
No, well, funnily enough, I'm talking at the moment with Charlie Mullins because he's big on apprenticeships, and I'm a Doctor of Education awarded by ARU, and that was because I used to speak at all schools, good, bad and ugly, passionate about telling people to find their passion, follow their passion, sometimes ignore their parents, which sometimes the parents were in those presentations so they weren't happy about. But I use the example of Mick Jagger, 80 years old now. Can you imagine when he was 15, whatever that was, 65 years ago, saying to his parents, I'm going to be a rock star? They'd have said, don't be pathetic, don't be stupid, get a proper job, like the teachers teach us, our parents teach us. How many billions of people would have lost the opportunity to be inspired by him? He's clearly inspired. He's not doing it for the money. You don't keep doing it for the money at 80 after you're multi-millionaire. Sure. He's doing it because he has a passion for it and he's giving something back and people are inspired by it. So to me, lock in early, find out what people want, teach them about passion, give them a love for learning. There's too much testing too early. If you give them a love for learning, they'll want to learn. And then we hear all the cliches like readers are leaders and so on. If they don't like reading, give them something they'd like to read, teach them how to read.
You've written a number of books and you host a podcast, Success is a System. Just listening to you there, it's clear you've got a system. You've proven that habits and following process works. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I mean, part of the challenge is we get on this, hamster wheel is an overused cliche, isn't it? But we do get on that. We get on that in education and we can't get off. That's the way we got to do it. We get into a job and it's like, hopefully I'll get recognised for the next job. So it is about sometimes interrupting that state, interrupting that hamster wheel that they're on and say, hang on a minute, let's just stop. And what my mentor would say to me, Mike, cross an ocean, climb a mountain, run a marathon. I'm not built for some of those things, but I've done many of all of those things. And he would say it because he needed to detach me from business or work. And he knew the only way to do that was to literally geographically take me away, to take me up a mountain or on a boat where there's no Wi-Fi, no connection, because that would make me think. And then he would interrogate me after, what did you learn from that? What did you learn from that you could apply to business? So for instance, as you were saying that, on the mountain thing, we have this sort of climb high, sleep low. If you climb too quickly, your body can't produce enough oxygen, so you need more red blood cells to take it. So what they'd say is, if you're not thinking straight or you're feeling a bit lightheaded, stop. The minute you stop, your body's been prioritising your legs and everything else. It now can say, well, these aren't moving anymore, I can send some oxygen to the brain. If you stop and breathe, you can think more clearly. But we can take that as a metaphor for business and say, if we're feeling overwhelmed or we're feeling like we can't stop, then stop. Even though it's counterintuitive, stop. breathe, think. And you look at people like Churchill, you go to the Imperial War Rooms, you can still see his little quiet chair where he had his quiet hour. Now, I would say every day when he had his quiet hour, he was meditating. Now, that wouldn't be a manly thing at the time, so he wouldn't have recognized it as meditating. He was taking some time to think about the biggest issue of the day. Most people don't take an hour to just think ever. You know, is it reasonable, for instance, that you would spend 10% of your time in the future of where you want your business to be, planning, strategizing, setting some goals? 10%, that's reasonable. Well, that's half a day a week. Most people don't spend half a day a year planning where they want to take their life or their business. So they're caught up in the day-to-day. So the biggest part of planning for me is to say, if I can help them think about this future state, where do you want to be in 3 years? If it all went really perfectly and it was awesome, what would your life look like? Yeah. Okay, well, this is where we are today. Like a map, we can then plug it into a system which is like a sat-nav. And once we do that, we work the map out. Well, the anxiety drops immediately because I haven't got to focus on the whole journey, the whole map. I've just got to focus on the turn left at the next turning, you know, go straight across at the next roundabout. And so all that anxiety, I can boil that map down to from 3 years to 4 quarters to 3 months to 4 weeks. And then suddenly I can achieve a £20 million goal in 3 years. But today I just need to make a couple of phone calls, have a couple of meetings, and so on. And people can't believe that small a focus could make that big a difference. The problem is most of what they do is wasting time. There are 5.6 million businesses in the UK, 4 million of them have no employees. Literally 4 million, they are self-employed, plumber, broadcaster, dentist, whatever, they've got no employees. Now, on average, they make less than £10,000 a year. And people would say, oh, you're really lucky, you got your own business. Most of them are living lives of quiet desperation. They don't want to tell people the truth. And so in effect, they're not got a business, they're self-employed. So they're employing themselves, but they're the worst employer they've ever had. They make themselves work 70 hours a week. Yeah. They have to take phone calls early morning, late at night. They have to do their own accounts. They don't get holiday. If they had a baby, they wouldn't be given 9 months off. So they're the worst employer and they're their own employer. And so, you know, to me, the passion and what I like doing is saying, you don't have to be here. This is worse. Get a job rather than stay here. Yeah. But we can actually grow your business from 0 to 10 to 49 and then beyond, where the real money is.
There's a lot there as well that touches on mental health. And actually physical health as well. You mentioned like being outside the mountains. That's clearly a big interest of yours. There are so many ways we can look after ourselves, from diet to going to the gym or running or breathing exercises and kind of mentally. What works for you? What do you do?
Yeah, so for me, it started as something I had to do because my mentor would say, Mike, just do it or stay broke. And I'd say, yeah, but my business is going too busy at the minute, Stuart. And he'd say, Mike, just effing do it. Or find another mentor. Now, he was an amazing mentor. I didn't want to find another mentor, so I'd go off and climb a mountain. Then I realized it was the most effective thing I did every year, taking myself away from my life. And even my family, and people say, oh, that's terrible, you should be with your family. I can become back as a better husband, as a better dad, because I start to get perspective on that mountain, on that boat. I start to realize, am I really enjoying this? You know, what am I like abusing Jules? We've been married 30 years, together 35, by just taking her for granted. All of this. So it is about getting away from life, whether that's in the gym. I like cycling. I've done London, Paris, Geneva, Nice. I go cycling on the weekends with a mate. It is literally just cutting myself off from the world in various ways to think, stop, breathe and think.
And what about anything along the lines of breathing exercises, meditation you mentioned? Do you practice that?
Yeah.
Yeah?
And in my book, Failure Breeds Success, in one of the chapters, I talk a lot about it. So in my 20s, I was really interested in religion. I'm not a religious person, but I was kind of, as someone who was already interested in behavior, I was interested in the commonality between religions, not the differences. And, you know, in commonality, they all got a lot in common. It's like, don't kill someone, don't steal, look after your neighbor, all these things. And yet, often we don't look for the commonality, we look for the differences. But in doing that, I went and I did a spiritual development circle in my early 20s for a couple of years, every Monday night. This amazing international medium, Leslie. And I'd go along to that, but she always started and finished with a guided meditation. And it amazed me how I could be completely alert, but in a completely different place. And so then, I mean, now you can follow 1,000 of them on Spotify or the internet, but then you needed someone to be talking you through it, or you needed a old cassette to do it. And then I got interested in how that could make me relaxed. It could take all the stress away. And I started to look at different types of meditation. I talk in the book a bit about you can have guided meditations, but you can go right down to spot meditations. You know, we're driving along. If you have to stop at a traffic light, rather than being angry, take that minute to think, why am I holding my wrists so tense? You know, it's like, just stop. Yeah. Take a big couple of breaths in, like look around. Oh, that's a lovely plant over there. And 1 minute can transform your next hour. Yeah. And so people say, I haven't got time for it. And, you know, what's the old saying that the guy goes to his sage and he says, I want you to meditate for an hour a day. He says, I haven't got time to meditate for an hour a day. He says, in that case, meditate for 2. You know, the more you don't think you can do it, the more you need to do it.
Love that. I would say a word that would describe you is successful. And there's a lot of connotations of success, you know, the book, the podcast. What's your definition of success?
Yeah, so it's health, wealth and happiness, but you have to have all 3. If you've got an imbalance, I know lots of multimillionaires that are very unhappy, very depressed, you know, always wanting more. My little brother, he's got an amazing restaurant in Goa now, a vegan restaurant, but that accidentally grew out of a passion sort of thing, Garden of Dreams, Aaron Bowl. But he lived for at least 10 or 15 years on $3,000 a year. He'd come back to the UK, work on building sites, get a few grand, go and live on beaches. And so that you can have loads of money and be depressed. You can have a tiny amount of money and be happy if you're following your dream. And of course, if they say that we gain our wealth, but often we kill our health in the process, and then we have to spend our wealth to regain our health, kind of thing. So to me, it's if you're healthy, wealthy and happy, and of course happy you could drill down into being around people you like, you love, feeling happy with who you are, and being able to be happy in your skin, whatever that's like. But if you can be really healthy, but it's tough if you've got no money. You know, you can have loads of money, but if you've dropped your family along the way and you've left a few partners along the way and you're not spending time with your kids, so it's got to be all 3. Yeah. The proportions can change, but if you're not healthy, wealthy and happy, I don't think you're successful.
Yeah, I agree with that. We're filming in the Jack studio, JAAQ, Just Ask a Question, the social media mental health platform. What are your thoughts on Jack?
Yeah, I mean, I had a conversation with somebody just about 2 weeks ago. I am known as a bit of a bare knuckle mentor because I kind of cut to the chase, partly because I want to give them better value for the money. And so I won't always give them the soft, cuddly counselling or coaching or mentoring. Anyway, this person was just having a down week or month, and he's, oh, I'm in a dark place. And if I can swear, I said, well, light some fucking candles then. You know, and that wasn't about being harsh. I knew he could take it. I've known him well enough. But I said, look, you're telling me this, you know, and I can tell you what we need to do to get out of it. But last month you were firing on all cylinders. You came in here, you were living differently. But not only that, your whole physiology was different. You know, you were allowing yourself to be positive and you were doing some things that were making you get the results at the time. And I said, if you're really, really in a dark place, because some of these things have become an easy label to give to excuse bad behavior. I said, if you're really in a dark place, if your car wasn't working, you'd take it to the garage. You know, if your electricity wasn't working, you'd call an electrician. You know, go and find a professional that can really help you. And for men, really, we're terrible at that. You know, yeah, we'll go and get a professional if it's a tradesman or something like that. But to say, I'm just not happy, or to say, I sort of hate myself, well, that ain't healthy. That can't be right. No. I can give you a good steer, but you need a professional when it gets like that. Yeah. And don't be ashamed or embarrassed to find a professional. Because
that's what stops people talking to, you know, whether it's to the doctor, to friends, family, which is potentially worse, or colleagues, particularly men. I think we're getting better, but that's partly because of just how much conversation's now around it. But, you know, the kind of historical scenario is we just don't talk and you bottle it up. And of course, there's nothing healthy about that at all.
Or we talk to the wrong people. We talk to Fred in the pub and he says, oh, just dig deep and find them, will you? And that makes you feel even worse. Yeah. You know, if he then leads on and say, well, look, if you've got a problem, mate, I'm there for you. But you should go and get some help. You know, there's nothing wrong with it.
No.
So, but sometimes before we talk to somebody, you wouldn't ask a dentist to perform heart surgery or a heart surgeon to take a tooth out, even though they're both qualified doctors. The reality is, don't ask somebody who's not qualified for their advice, because you'll get bad advice.
Yeah.
So go to a place where they're best qualified to help you. And if you don't know, go to your doctor, because it is a health thing.
Yeah.
Just the fact that we can't see it doesn't mean it's not a problem. And it can affect everything.
Yeah.
Literally, it affects relationships, it affects physical health, it affects your ability in your job or your business, which then affects your financial position. It
a whole
can
knock-on
destroy
effect,
someone
right?
much quicker than a simple ailment.
Yeah. Big synergy between us is property investment and development.
Yeah.
Tell me how you got into that. And I'd love to know, as we sit here right now with interest rates as they are, talked about a sort of archaic education system. We have an archaic planning system. Like, we could have a whole other level of conversation and a whole episode on that. But I'd love to know how you're navigating that, what your strategy is, and what advice you give to someone coming in to investing in property right now.
Yeah, well, a book that I'm writing at the moment is called Into the Eye of the Storm, and it's from the Sailing Across the Ocean. But it's about how, you know, sometimes we don't avoid the storms, we face them. And in facing them, we can use their energy to catapult us faster forward if you're in a sailing race. And sometimes they come upon you like a squall. You know, you're not planning for it, boom, they're there. Things hit us. Having a strategy for how you will deal that, and agreeing with the team what's going to happen in this thing. So having a risk analysis and then a risk strategy around things is really important. I got into property literally as a teenager, helping a builder making money. I realised I loved it. I realised he could make good money. I then was more passionate about the retail, so grew that career. But when I sold a business, I retired in 2012 at the age of 46. And I loved the 9 months. We had Easter and summer away, spent most of the summer in Florida at one of our homes over there and stuff. But then I was driving myself crazy. I was bored. You know, I wasn't
stimulated,
whole, because I needed that side of me. I was driving my wife crazy and my kids crazy. So I remember talking to a mate, and I said, I don't want to go back into retail. I've kind of done that. I love it. But he said, well, come work with me in the building. And it was, sometimes we hit these points where at the right time, at the right place, you know, when the student's ready, the teacher will appear. And I got back into it and I loved it. And it is a great business. But back to the eye of the storm thing, there's times when you grab the wind, you harness the wind, and you just use it. There are other times when you need to drop the sails and hunker down, because it's just too dangerous to be going full on. At this moment in time, the average person who's got a buy to let, and a lot of people have in the last couple of years, if they were at a 2 or 3% mortgage on, say, a 200,000 mortgage for a 300,000 home, then they were paying about £5,000 or £6,000 a year interest. Now they're going to be paying £16,000 to £20,000. That is thousands of pounds above the rent they can get, and it will make them go bust. So never overstretch. You know, if banks are saying we'll draw a line at 70, very quickly try to get your exposure down to 50 to 60. So you've still got some headroom. But if you're there and you're in the storm, then use skills and have a strategy for how you get through the storm. Sometimes that is about belt and bracing it, refinancing, trying to borrow as much as you can for as long as you can, as cheap as you can, to get you through maybe 5 years. I mean, what I would say is, I don't think 5, 6, 7% base rates is abnormal. We've had too many years of an abnormal 0 to 2%. So we do need to learn and accept this is kind of normality. You know, I bought my first house at 15%. If we accept this is normality and build a business and a strategy for this, if it goes down, we make more money.
Yeah.
If it goes up, we lose everything, because in addition to the mortgage on a buy-to-let, you often PG it as well.
Yeah.
So suddenly your home's at risk.
Yeah.
It's a tough time. And if you have to sell assets to get you down to a decent exposure ratio, sell assets. The first cut's always the best cut.
Yeah.
You know, take the big decision now. Don't hold on out of vanity that it's worth more than that. I'm not selling that for 20% below. If you need to, take the cut.
That's awesome advice, and incredibly valuable at this time as well.
Yeah.
I've learned so much from talking to you. I could carry on talking for a lot longer, but that's all we've got time for. Thank you so much.
I've really enjoyed it. It's been a pleasure.
Cheers.
Thanks very much.